Hi, I'm Chris Rangel. Welcome to the Banana Can. This is the first video in a series related to rendering a GUI with the JavaFX library, which you can get from the Eclipse marketplace. In this video, I'm going to create a basic GUI and set up a template that can be used as a starting point for different scenes within a program. I'm going to start by creating a project, and I'm going to name it JavaFX GUI. Now, in this, I'm going to set up a couple of packages. I'll go with the main package, and I'm also going to create a UI package. Now, under the main package, the first class I'm going to create is just a driver class, which will contain my main part of my program, the main function. And what I'm going to do is import a JavaFX class called application. And I'm going to have the driver, the actual main class, extend the class. Now, basically what that does is it makes your main application, your main program, an extension of the application class, which is going to drive, like contain all of the other classes, and it's the main centerpiece of your application. And the only thing in the actual main function is just going to be launch and pass if there's any command line arguments past them. Now, under start, I'm going to do several things, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Before I get to that part, I'm going to set up one of the other classes under UI. I'm going to create a new class and call it UI settings. That's what I'll do. Settings. Make it final. Now, this particular class is basically just going to store some values that I'm going to use in the rest of the program. Static int. First thing being the scene height. If I can spell height right. For now, I'm going to set it at 750. I may end up changing it. Basically, by setting up these values, I'm putting one place in the entire program that you need to come in order to change any of the values for the UI. So that way it's a constant throughout the whole program. Let's see here, scene width. I'll make that 1200 for the moment here. Okay. Let's see here. Also, you know what? I'm going to copy this so I don't have to type it every time. Okay. Now let's go with columns out of 12. That'll put each column about 100. Okay. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I need to do inner padding and outer padding. I'll explain what these are for later. Well, I guess I'll explain it now. It's essentially the padding inside, between the elements inside the window. And the outer padding is essentially the padding between the border of the window and the elements. Which, actually, if I'm going to do that, let me make one little adjustment here already, because in order for the scene width to go up, let's see here. I'm going to put let's see here. Base column width. Now, we'll make this 1200. And then, you know, that's just the width of the columns base. And then for the scene width, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the base column width plus outer padding. And since there's padding on both sides, times 2. Just so that way I can set the yeah, essentially, you know, I allow 1200 usable pixels, and then, you know, it gets padded around after that. I mean, you could do this any way you want, but I'm just kind of setting up a general thing. And obviously, you can come back and play with these numbers and do whatever you feel like doing. You know, I mean, you can see how each of them affect everything else. So let's see here. Columns. I'll do 12. And I guess, yeah, I guess I'll just go with that for now. And then let's see here. Also, I'm going to set up buttons. So, and I want buttons to span, let's say 3 columns. Actually, that part, not our columns. And then let's see here. We'll do a specific column width. And we'll set that equal to the base column width. By number of columns. For a general area. Now, also, I think what I'm going to do is, while I'm here, if I can type, while I'm here, I'm going to set up some fonts, which I'm going to call this one title font. New font. Basically, this is just specifying the font of in the GUI. So, which I'm going to use Arial for title. I use 48 point. And I can import that. Nope, definitely want to import the JavaFX one. JavaFX scene text font. Okay, let's see here, a couple other fonts real quick. That just makes it easier specifying them here, so I don't have to specify them anywhere else. Let's go with small font. We'll go let's go with, how about mid font and big font? Just to give me some variety of what I can do. Let's see, 24 and 30. So that way it just makes it, yeah, it gives me some variety of what I can use. Okay, now that's all I'm going to do with the UI settings at the moment. Okay. Now, also under the UI, I'm going to create a new class, and we'll make this one, let's call it, how about screen template? Now, okay, under screen template. Now, this is basically going to be the main template class. We're not actually going to instantiate it, so I'm going to make it abstract. And now, let's see here. We're going to need to use a few things. We'll make a private scene. This is the class that JavaFX uses to essentially designate a particular display. The main structure of JavaFX, you have a stage, which is your program, basically, program level. It's like the window. And then you have scenes. Now each scene is essentially kind of like a group of objects. It's like a top level container under your window. And you can have different scenes that, but you can only display one scene at a time, but you can have different scenes that your stage can transverse through. And obviously I'm going to use this. This is the template. This is the main point of this template, is to create a scene that you can use to adapt to other, for other functions. Now, let's see here. Right under the scene, I want to use a border pane. And I'm going to call this the outer pane. Okay, the border pane. The border pane is basically broke up into different sections. You have the top and the bottom section. You have a center section. You have the left and right section. And within it, you can assign different elements in any specific section. Now, seeing as this is the overall class, I'm mainly just going to assign the customizable elements to the top, which will center it left, right, like horizontally center it, and then allow the items to grow from the top to the bottom. Although you could you could assign objects to the other points as far as the template's concerned. But I'm going to start out with a basic usage. So now, as far as the customizable elements here, if I can spell elements, because these up here are non-customizable. They are basically just things, stuff that holds everything else. Now, I want to make a, let's see here, make this protected so that way it can be used by anything in the same package, grid pane. A grid pane is another container which allows you to place items into, but it's exactly how it sounds. It's a grid. So it's kind of like having a spreadsheet of sorts, like Excel spreadsheet, where you place elements at any different place and within the columns and rows. And that's where the columns really comes into play that I've added into the UI settings, is mainly for this, to designate the columns in this section. Also, let's see here, label, I'll make a, okay, here, scene, I'll make this a scene specific label, so and then I got to import, make sure to import the JavaFX scene control label. And let's see here, private, put a couple buttons. I'm going to include a button, main menu button, and another button. We'll go for, scene specific button. And let me import buttons. Okay, now we'll go, let's see here, button label, I'll put text. Oops. Next. Let's think all the main elements that I'm going to put in right now. That's basically the things that are going. Okay, now for the constructor, we'll go screen, if I can spell. We'll go with, for the constructor that's doesn't include any arguments, the default constructor. And then I'm going to go with the constructor that that takes the stage. So I can add elements to stage. Now, of course, I have to import stage. Okay. Now the first thing I'm gonna do here is, let's see here, set my outer pane, which is the non-customizable portion, to just initialize it. New border pane. And then initialize the customizable pane as a grid pane. And initialize the scene. Let's see here. And for the scene, I'm going to add the outer pane. And I'm going to use UI settings dot scene width and UI settings dot scene height. Okay. Now, that initializes your scene. Basically, it's initializing it with the outer pane being the main subcontainer, and then obviously, as pretty obvious, setting the scene width and scene height, which I pulled from the UI settings. So that way, if I need to change them later or something like that, I can just go back to the UI settings and change it in one spot. Now, for a default values, for default, I'm going to set the scene specific label as, initialize it as new label. If I can spell, man. Let's see here. Scene. I'll go with this awesome scene text. Now, in theory, you should never see this text. However, if you did an uninitialized, like you didn't specify the text for the label in your exact scene, if you didn't go through and manually specify it to override this, then this is what it would display. So, okay, now moving on. Let's see here, action. Actually, let's see here. Okay, got scene specific label. Oh, main menu button. That's what's next. Button. Just have to initialize all the buttons and labels. Button, and we'll go main menu. Pretty self-explanatory. Then the other button I called scene specific button and button, and we'll say scene specific. Okay, so now I've initialized all the buttons and labels, and grid panes. Okay. Now, after this part, going to go through and do some things here using some more of the UI settings. Basically, set the label font to we'll set it to the big font, the label up top. Actually, you know what? We'll set all of these to the big font, the buttons and labels, by default anyway. So, see here, dot set font, and we'll go UI settings, dot big font, and I'm gonna cheat this right here because I don't feel like typing the whole thing again. Okay. Setting the fonts. Okay. Now, also, I'm going to set the, for the buttons, the way the buttons work, if you don't specify a width, they match exactly what the text is. So this button will be shorter than that button, and so on and so forth. If you want a standardized size, then you have to pretty much specify that you want it. So set preferred width and double dot max value. All that does is it just maxes out the width to whatever specified columns that you put it in, everything, which we'll get to in a minute. I'm going to do the same thing for the other button. label.max value. Okay, and now in order to keep this stuff cleaned up here, I'm going to set up the grid pane in its own function. So let's see here, set up grid pane. And I'll just grid pane. Okay, now well, and I'll get to that in a minute. Because I think first I just want to add the go ahead and add the stuff to the main pane. Okay, so now we've set up, thus far what we've done is we set up the, initialized all of the elements. Now what I'm going to do, the main pane, I'm going to add the sub-elements to it. So first thing I'm going to add is the label. Now, exactly what I'm doing is I'm adding the label, adding it to your column 0 or your row 0, and I'm adding it into column 1 just to offset it from the very end. And then I'm going to, well, I'll get to that part in a minute. Okay, now let me set up all of these first. Main pane dot add. I'm going to add the main menu button. Now this one I want to add to the same row as the instruction, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the label, basically I'm going to have the label here, and then over at the end of the other side of the thing, I'm going to have the button over here. So what I'm going to do in order to achieve that is I'm going to use these UI settings, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the UI, or set the column of the button equal to the number of columns number of columns, where is it? Basically setting it to the number of columns minus the button width, because the button's going to be 3 columns wide. So number of columns minus button width is setting the column. So basically 12 is the number of columns, but if you subtract off the 3, then it'll move it over. And I'll set it in first row. Now, let me get to the last one. I'll do all that at once. Main pane dot add the next button, which is the scene specific button. I'm going to put on the second row. Because this one I put in row 1, skipping row 0 just to space it down some. So then I'll put this one in the third index, or the second row we're using. And then I'm going to have the column is the same as this one. So that way the two buttons are the same width and the same place. Now, what I'm doing from here, I'm actually adding some optional arguments, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this spanning all the columns except for the button width, the width of the button, and spanning one row. And then this one, I'm going to span the width of a button and only one row. And then this one, same thing. Now, yeah, the 4 arguments, if you only put 2 in, it's the row and column. If you put the 4 arguments in, it's row, column, or I mean column, it's column, row, and then if you put 4 arguments in, it's column, row, column span, and row span. So that's what I'm going to do in order to standardize them. Now, that being said there, I'm going to set up or add the main pane to the outer pane, or actually set top. I want to set it as the top thing, so that way it takes up the top center section. And then, okay, down here, what I'm going to do is down here, I'm going to set up the grid pane, the main pane. So I can just call this main pane, so that way it's easier to see what's going on. And okay, first thing I'm going to do is set up constraints to the column width values. Column constraints are basically kind of setting up the preferred widths. So for this, column equals 0. I'm going to rotate through to the number of columns, and now, okay, column constraints. This is actually a class that's set up for the specific purpose. Constraint equals let's see here. Let me import it. Now, yes, I technically could do this in the constructor, but I'm doing it this way, so that way it's a little, you can see what it's doing a little easier. Set preferred width, and I'll set the preferred width to the column width. So basically setting the preferred width, and then main pane, get column constraints. Oh crap. And from here, I'm going to add column, comma, constraint. Basically, I'm cycling through all the columns of the main pane, which is the grid pane, and setting each of the columns to a preferred width of the column width that you specified in the UI settings. So, pretty straightforward. After this, still within the setup grid pane function, I'm going to set the padding. So this is column constraints, and then I'm going to set padding. And then let's see here, main pane dot set padding. Now for this, I'm just going to go with a new insets. UI settings dot outer padding. Okay. Insets is again another class that's specifically, well, it's not specifically used, but it's used in order to hold the essentially like your values, like left, upright, left, right, or I mean up, like your corner values for like a rectangle, and let's see here. Set I'll set the horizontal gap equal to UI settings dot inner padding, and then set the V gap is the same thing. Okay, and now that being done, I'm gonna call it. I'll call it just before I add everything to it. I mean, it doesn't really matter the order, but grid pane and main pane. Okay. Although, actually, you know what? The main pane, I actually don't need that in there because I made it a static. Okay, so that keeps me from having to pass it. Okay. Now, that being said, I'm going to set a few more things, set some getters and setters, because this is an abstract method, and since this is a private, you know, these are all private values except for the main pane. The main pane you'll be able to it's protected, so you'll be able to basically edit it directly or customize it directly. But everything else you'll have to go through getters and setters and make it, you know, better so that way stuff doesn't get messed with. Let's see here. First of all, actually, one thing I need to add. A way for your main program or main driver, the driver to pull the scene. And if I can type this dot scene, and then let's see here. Now let me get on to protected void set scene specific label text. Set the text given a string text, and set text. Pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the scene specific button. Set the button text. Okay. Now let's see here. Also, a couple other things I want to do for this as well. let's see. I will set up, for one, I'm going to set up a way for set the visibility in case, for some reason you want to have you want to hide something, make it easy for it. And then I'm going to copy this. Set visible to is visible. Okay, so there's the label, and we'll do this. And we'll do, okay, the label, then let's do the button. And then the other button is the main menu button. Oops, I forgot to put the word button down here. Okay, main, so that way you can hide any of the 3 specific elements that were added. Okay, then let's see here. Also, something else which I'll put right up here. Gonna put a way to set the action associated with the button. So basically what it does when you actually click on the button. And I'm including for the menu button, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up real quick. Since the main menu button is already here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it easy in order to do that. So let's see, void set menu button action. Okay. I'm going to set up oops, I didn't need that comment. I'm going to set up 2 different ways, or 2 different sets of arguments, basically overloading this function. I haven't just, because we'll see which one I actually need to use, but I think I want to do it so that way this one button dot set on action. And now this is a lambda expression, and this is stage dot set scene, and we'll go with scene. Okay, I'll explain what this is doing and how this is set up. Now, basically what this is doing is it's using a lambda expression. Essentially, this is an event. This stands for an event. That's the set on of action event handler. And what it is inside these brackets is basically the function of what it does. meaning expanded, it would be like this. And so technically you could have it print something, print it fired, whatever. You could have more than one expression in here, and it's going to run everything inside these brackets. Now, I only really need it to do one thing because it's a button. It's a button that's sets a scene that, it links it to a scene. Basically, this function will essentially link the action of a button to selecting a scene. And calling this function, sending it a button, the scene you want it to go to, and your primary stage in order to call the scene. But that's how you can link a particular button with a different scene. Now, for the overloaded version, or the second version, this one, if I wanted to link a specific button, like say if I had a main menu where I had a button that linked to other scenes, I could use this function to set a specific scene for it to link to. However, if I don't specify a button, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the main menu button to link. So let's see here. Got button actions. Oh, and I do want this just in case I need to call this fire scene specific button. Since I'm not able to access the scene specific button directly, I'm putting a function in to allow you to directly fire it if you needed to, or fire the action that's associated with it. Action, yeah, to fire the action. So scene specific dot fire. If this button was just included in the scene, if this wasn't an abstract scene, then you could just fire it. You could just put the scene button, or the button, and then fire. But you can't do that directly because I'm encapsulation. But so that's the method. It's almost like a getter and setter. It's an accessor of sorts. It's to access the action if necessary. And there is one other thing, just in case. I'm not sure that I'm gonna need to, but I'm gonna put in getters for the scene text too. Get. Actually, I'm just gonna copy those because I just change around. So the button label. Control-C. Let me see here. Button label text. Actually, here, I'll do this. Getters and setters. I'll just do this the short way. Button label text and button text. actually, let's see here. I actually don't need these. I don't think I need those because I just have setters to just have setters to set it directly instead, so I don't actually need a separate variable. And then let's just say get, and let's go string, and string, and then let's go return, change that to get, just in case. I'm not sure 100% that I would need to, but better do it right now while I'm thinking about it than not. And if it's really not used, then you could always come back and delete it. But I just like to have full functionality of ability to pull or set getters and setters. Okay, now I think that's about all I want to do in this template. Okay, let me see here. Now, the as far as the template goes, now under UI, I'm going to create a new class in order to implement, and let's just call this scene 1. I mean, I'm just going to call it that for now. Now, I'm going to screen template. I'm going to make the screen template the superclass. I'm going to do that manually, but basically just extend screen template. And oh wait, there's one more thing I want to do here. I do want to make one abstract method in order to require initialization here. So abstract, by making an abstract method, what you do is you basically just define it, but not hold on, if I can spell, initialize stage, primary stage. Basically, it makes it a required function. However, it's not defined here. You have to define it in the sub class, like the child class. So now, when I get here, I have to specify what it does here. So first thing I'm going to do is put a constructor, public scene 1 stage, primary stage. Okay. Now in here, I'm going to initialize the super class, primary stage, and then I'm going to set the scene as this scene for now. I guess, I'm going to do that main. If this was the main menu, then, matter of fact, you know what? I will make this the main menu. Let me refactor this because I think I'll start out with the main menu. Start with the main menu, and I'll add one more screen to it just to show you how it goes. So now Save all. Okay. So because this is the main menu, I want it to pull to the focus, basically show as soon as you load it. Set scene, this dot get scene. And now I'm gonna set my is that what I called it? What did I call it here? I'm setting the main menu button visibility. There you go. False. I'm hiding the main menu button because, well, I'm in the main menu. There we go. Oh, that's why. Didn't capitalize main in here. So let me fix that here because otherwise it's going to plague me. Okay. Oops. Let me undo that. Okay. I don't need a main menu button in the main menu. And I'm also going to set the scene specific button visibility is false, because I don't need that one, because I'm going to put my own buttons. Okay, initialize. Stage. Okay. That's the end of my constructor. Basically initializes the screen template specific stuff, then sets a stage at this one and hides the two buttons that are the default buttons. And from there, I'm going to handle the rest of the stuff in initialization. Actually, I'm going to break it up a little bit. Private void. I'm going to set up the title. And title label. Let's see here. Main menu. And I'll have to import that real quick. Okay. Let's see here. Set font. This is where I use my title font, the largest. Now, what I'm doing here, I'm setting the horizontal alignment for the title label within the grid pane thing to the center, like horizontal position center. Now I'm calling the static, basically I'm making a call to the static or static call to the class, doing that just to set the overall horizontal alignment that's specific to this particular screen, this particular scene, but it's not going to be specific to the others. That's why I included the other ones. So, okay, and then main pane, which is the class that I can access, and I'm adding my title label and row 0 or column 0, and I'll do row 1 just for spacing. And now also I'm going to make this go across the whole thing because I have it centered horizontally, so I'm spanning the label across the entire set of columns. So it'll actually only have text in the center. However, in order to ensure it's center, I'm spanning across the whole thing. Okay. So here, let's see here, set up title. Now, also, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the, I'm going to basically set it to where if I hit the escape key, it'll exit the program. So I'm setting a scene key press event. Now I can't, well, I mean, there might be a way, but I'm not sure how to do a lambda expression for a key event. For a normal event handler, it's fine, but for the key event handler, it's a bit of a pain. Let me there. Okay. Let's see here. Hold on. Let me see here. Import JavaFX event. Let me see here. I'm going to override public void handle and then key event. And then if event dot get code, because I'm getting the key code, dot equals, and then key code dot escape. Basically setting it as far as the escape key. If that's true, then system dot exit, and we'll just exit with 0 because no fault. And okay, now for the scene key press event. Okay, now for that, I'm going to need to add another function in the template, which I'll just add. Where did I put my other actions? Actions, I'll put them up here, so I'll put it right there. Okay. Set, what did I call it? Key press event, Control C, Control V. Okay, key press event. Now, and then this is going to take an event handler key event, and we'll call it E here, and then import. Okay. Now, the only thing I'm going to do is scene dot set on key pressed. Yeah, I'm doing it this way. This way it's nice and simple. I can set it, but I can set the individual event. Like I send it an actual event, which is what I'm doing here. Oh, did I set? Oh wait, what did I? Oh, for some reason I have two sets there. I don't know how I ended up with that. Okay. Basically, I'm sending it this new event handler, which is right here. And actually, let me, this goes there. Let's see here. Let me make sure, see what, okay, this is the end of this one. Oh, so I need another bracket. See, that goes with that one, and this one goes with that one. I don't know how it's going to do if I, there we go. Okay, basically I'm sending a new event, event handler for a key event, which I'm overriding the handle to this specific set of code, which just if the key pressed equals escape, then it exits, because this is the main menu. So I want to be able to exit if you push the escape key. Just, faster than pushing the little red box or whatever. Now, let's see, I've got that part. After this, I'm going to make a function that allows me to set up the buttons that appear on the main menu. Set up buttons, stage, primary, stage. Okay, now for this, I'm going to take an array list of, I'll do the superclass, which all the screens will be part of. Screens. Basically, what I'm going to do is in the driver program or the driver class, I'm going to essentially add, when I create screens, I'm going to create the screens there, instantiate them, and then add it to an array list, and then send the array list to this function, which is why I made it public, set up buttons. And this function is going to iterate through the array list and create a button on the main menu for said scene. So that's the goal. Okay, now let me go with let's see here. Template screens. Going to iterate through the screens, and then create a new button for the particular screen, and then get the text. Yes, I do need to get the button text. Get let's see here, scene specific button text. And oh, you know what? Actually, you know what? Hold on. I do need to put private string button text. I'll just call it button text. I do need to put that in there because, and then put a set. Do need to put a separate button text, because this is going to be technically the main menu buttoned text. Set button text. Let's see here. There we go. Because here, that's the set. I'll need a get. Because here, what I'm going to do is be able to pull it and That way I can get it to slap onto the button itself. So what I need to do is get button text. Hold on here. Import. And oh wait. Okay. And then you know what? I need to add that. I knew I had those in mind for something. I just had forgotten. Private string label text. And let me just put a note in here. Okay, and then it's up label, copy and paste, and then set label text, get label text, get label text. Okay, and then okay. Now here label label screen dot get label text. There we go. That way I can get the stuff from the specific one. Let's set the font as for the button is big, and then also actually I guess I'll do the label set font. I'll set that one as the big also. Oh wait, got UI settings. And then let's see here. I'm also gonna put the button to the preferred width, max out the button's preferred width. And now let's see here. Next, this is where I'm gonna set the menu button action. Set it to link to the scene of the screen and send it the button that I just made. So basically here, remember that function I set up to set an action to a specific button? Well, here I'm sending it the scene from the individual screen, and I'm sending it the button that to link to it on the main menu that has the text that's specific to that screen, for that linking. Now, I'm going to set up the index for specific column, or the setting up the rows, screens dot index of. Basically, I'm pulling the index of the current screen and adding the offset, which I didn't put in. I was thinking about it, but I didn't. Okay, I'm putting an offset because I don't want the buttons to start out at the top row, because you need to lower it by a couple rows, because the first, because I have it set up, let me comment this out just for a second, because I have it set up to where the title label is set on row 1. So it skips row 0, so that way it's not the very top. It goes down 1. And So the offset, I need at least 2 offset, you know, to start at least row 2, because the title's on row 1. So what I'm doing is I'm setting the index of the screen, adding 2, and you know, setting that equal to I, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the button, add button, going to add it to, you know, just a beginning column, and then adding it to row I, and then I'm going to make it span the width of the button, and, you know, no, just span 1 row. And then I'm going to add the label, and I'm going to have it start at the column of button width plus 1, and also I, and then have it span the remainder of the area minus the button width. So, let me line these up, make it a little bit easier to see. Let's see here, go span I. Let's see, label spanning. I need to, oh, and there we go. 1 column. Because basically this essentially lines it up. This is this is on you know, column 0, just the beginning, and this one is column the button width plus 1, so 1 over from the end of the span, and then this one spans the number of columns minus button width, the whole rest of the area, and then they're both on row index of I, because it'll scroll through and put them on the bottom. And then let's see here. And then set the menu button, which is setting the button action without specifying. Remember the overloaded, setting the button action without specifying just sets the menu button action on the scene itself. And I'm going to put this dot get scene to connect it back to the scene. And I think that's it for what I want to do with this one, with the main menu. Now, I'm going to create one more scene. Class, this one I'm going to call scene 1. And I'm going to show you how to do the abstract, or, you know, do it without, you know, having it do it. Extends screen template, and let's see here. Okay, now I have to implement initialize private void initialize. Let's see your stage. And override. Oh wait. Save all this. Okay. Now, oh wait, it was protected, not private. Okay. Now, also, I'm just going to kind of copy a few things here. I'll go ahead and copy that just to give me a starting point, although I'm going to change some things because I don't want to set the scene to this one, and I don't want to make those buttons invisible. I just want to just initialize the thing. Now, what I am going to do before I go and initialize, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some things. So set, let's see here, set, man, if I can, set scene specific button text. Okay, we'll call this this. Actually, you know what? I'll show you what it looks like when load it first without doing any of that, because I technically don't have to. Do anything else at the moment. Let me go back to the driver. I'm going to set up the basically set up the driver from here. Okay. Now I need to set up an array list of screen template. Let's call it screens. Array list. And let me import some stuff. Import. Okay. Let's see here. We'll call this. We'll make a main menu. Main menu. All I'm doing is initializing the main menu or instantiating the main menu class. And I know I have to import. Okay. Oh, wait. Call that primary stage for consistency. Okay, now what I'm going to do is on this main menu, this array list holds all screens except the main menu. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go screens dot add new we'll call this new scene 1 class. And yeah, I need to import. Okay. And then I need to set up after I add all the menus or all the screens, which is only one right now. I'm going to set up the buttons and send it the array list. Now, this is actually setting the stage. There's a few things that you have to do before it'll actually show anything. Set title. I'm going to set this as Amazing JavaFX Program. There you go. That's what I'm going to do. And then I'm also going to do a couple of things which aren't necessarily required, but just center on screen. And for now, set resizable. I'm going to set non-resizable. Okay. And then this is the command that you absolutely have to have. primary stage dot show. Okay. Now this, assuming that don't have any huge errors, this, when I launch this, this should bring up an actual window. Oh, see, there we go. Amazing JavaFX program. Saw some scene text. Yeah, seeing, you know, I have to do some things. Okay, see, here's the scene one. Here's scene one, and here's the main menu, which I have to finish setting up scene one because I didn't actually go through and set the text yet. I wanted to show you what it looked like. This is just literally the template. This is the template. You know, this awesome scene text, scene specific, main menu. These buttons, this one does scene specific stuff, which you have to actually, you know, put something in there for. And this one is automatically linked to the main menu, along with this one being automatically linked to the scene. So let me on the main menu, let me make this text go away real quick. Oh, and I pushed escape and it, of course, went out. So main menu, set, what did I call it? Set specific label visibility. Where is it? There we go. Set specific label visibility. Yeah, put that as false. That'll take away that extra. See that extra text there. So now, see, that's there on this one because I didn't do anything with it. But anyway, that's the setup. So now let me go and set a few things real quick with the scene one. On the scene one, I'm going to do a couple of things right off the bat and initialize. I'm going to set, we'll set the button text to this, you know, this button, or do something. There we go, that's it, do something. And then we'll set, let's see here, set scene specific label text, scene, there we go, there we go. Just, this is scene one. Okay. And then, let's see, let's see here, scene specific label. Oh, and then, let's see here, set, let's see, technically I don't need to put this, but in the constructor, or the initialization, kind of am. Or actually, you know what, I don't want to put this initialization, I'm going to put this all up here, because I just want it up in the, initial construction. Set button text, set label text, scene one. Okay, now I'm just gonna change those couple of things and see now. Oh, that's what I do, something scene specific. Yeah, hold on here. Let me put this button text. This is the main menu button text. So scene one. Scene one. Let's see here. Now we go. Here we go. Scene one. Awesome scene. See, I just changed those up just by setting the beginning of the scene initialization, or the scene constructor, just setting what the text is on here. For this button, I mean, I could set that button as well. and should go ahead and set this one to so let's see here. This dot set scene specific button text. This is the one I want to set to do something. Okay. Now, see, do something. Okay, that's the gist of, setting up a template. There is one other thing. Should be able to, let me see, scene template. Set scene key pressed event. Oh, I could, let's see, scene key pressed event. Okay, that's the gist of setting it up. In any case, during this initialize, this is the point where you would do stuff specific to this particular scene, meaning if you wanted more labels, more buttons, more text fields, like if you wanted to add other elements to the scene, you could add it in there. And what that would do would be to reconstruct or add more things to this particular scene. Now to add another scene, it's literally super easy. Like if I'm just going to use the scene 1 class since I already created it, but literally if I wanted to add another, version of it or another copy of it, I just have to do this right here. And ta-da, now here you go. And if I wanted to, just for the heck of it here, this is going to be index 1, but I'm just putting this in here for demonstration. Yeah. Actually, let's see here. I'm going to do it this way here. For demonstration purposes, obviously I would have different customization and things like that within the individual scenes, but I'm going to show for demonstration purposes how easy it is to add stuff like all of this. I'm just going to indent just so. Let's see here. C2 dot. Let's see here. Get scene. Now, actually, you know what? Here. Let me add scene 1. I'm going to put a let's see here, public set I'm gonna actually just override set label. Let's see here, string. Just real quick, just to show that it's different. Whoa, wait a minute. I really forget an L in there. Crap. There we go. actually, I don't know why I'm doing that. Got crossed doing things. Okay. Now, just to show this one's different, now I'm going to 2 dot. Okay, now, there we go. See, right there, I just changed that. I mean, it's just, it takes very little with the template. It takes very little like to add a scene. Literally, to add a scene, you just have to create a new scene, or you can create it. You can create a new class and just instantiate it. Or technically, you could, if you wanted to reuse a particular class, like you could reuse it and just modify it after the fact. But in any case, I know this has been a really long video, but I'm sure, and at some point in the future, I'll try to break it down. I didn't necessarily plan out exactly how long it was going to be, but I wanted to be at least kind of comprehensive enough to show you a finished product. Well, not a finished product, but a working product using a screen template, or and main menu, just a basic settings, and then let me take out that extra scene. Now, as far as functionality and everything else, that's well, where you come in. But I may go over some more things. I'm probably going to have a follow-on video that goes over how to add elements and what kinds of elements there are and things like that of JavaFX. But for now, this at least is a start. So, in any case, I guess I'm Chris Rangel, and this is the Banana Can, and I'll see you guys in the next video.